To those of you who made it. Baron Harold shoved the heavy parchment scroll to one side and looked up at Lady Pauline in exasperation. "Pauline, do you understand what this idiot is getting at?" he asked. The head of Castle Redmont's diplomatic service nodded. "In principle, I do, my lord," she said. Harold made a frustrated gesture. "Then, in principle, please explain it to me," he said, adding in an undertone, "as if I don't have enough on my plate planning for war without this sort of nonsense." Lady Pauline suppressed a smile. Arad had a well-known dislike of legal documents with their where-ifs, where-offers, and non-withstandings. Sir Montag of Gaunt, Sir Montag of Corbram Keep is obliged to supply a draft of 4 knights and 30 men at arms when called upon, she began. And I take it he is refusing to do so," said the Baron wearily. "No, not exactly, sir," she replied. "He is willing to supply the men. He is unwilling to place them all himself under your command." Harold frowned. "But he is under my command," he said. "Cobram Keep is within the boundaries of Redmont Fief, and I am his lord and commander." Pauline nodded agreement. "Correct, my lord, but he does have a case, a very tenuous one, I must say, but a case nonetheless." Harold's face, already flushed with annoyance, became a little redder. "How can he have a case?" he demanded. "His castle is within my boundaries. I am the lord of Redmont Fief. He is my tenant. I am his commander. End of story. Ipso facto. Caso closedo. As he sees it, my lord, the whole thing hinges on a treaty signed by his great-great-grand uncle and the present king's great-great-grandfather when Combam Keep became part of the kingdom of Ireland and the fief of Redmont. At the time, Combam Keep was allowed to retain a certain level of independence. That's ridiculous. You can't run a kingdom like that. What was Duncan's great-great whatever he was thinking? It was a gesture only, my lord. The said independence would apply only to certain matters of civil administrations. The right to perform and register marriages, for example, not military matters. "Well then," Aaron exclaimed, throwing his hands wide, "if that's the case, where is the problem? The intent is obvious, my lord, in context, but this treaty was drawn up by lawyers, so there is a certain ambiguity in the wording. Ambiguity is always certain when lawyers are involved," Harold said. His face brightened. He rather liked the piece of wordplay. It struck him as quite droll. He looked hopefully for a smile from Lady Pauline, but in vain. Deciding she must have missed it, he began again. "You see, you said a certain ambiguity, and I said ambiguity is always certain when—" Yes, my lord, quite so," Pauline said, cutting him off. Harold looked disappointed. She continued, "Nigel and I have gone through the treaty and the letter, and Nigel has drafted a reply. He has found 17 points of law where Montag has grossly mispresented the intent of the treaty. In short, he has destroyed Montag's case most comprehensively." "He is good at that," Harold said, smiling once again. This time Pauline smiled with him. "No better, my lord," she said. "So what's our next move?" the Baron asked. Pauline preferred the letter she had mentioned, but he waved it away. If Nigel and Pauline were happy with it, He knew it would be what watertight. Pauline nodded. She appreciated the trust he placed in her. Very well, my lord. We'll do a final draft, and I thought I might have one of my students deliver it. She replaced the draft letter in a thin leather folder and widened it and withdrew another document, laying it on the table in front of her and smoothing it out so that it lay flat. Now, my lord, there is another matter we must discuss. She saw the pain expression on the Baron's face. She knew he didn't want to discuss it. You're talking about this bro ha with Holt. Brouhaha with Holt. Sure. I suppose I really don't have the time, he said, making dismissive gestures at her. Nonetheless, my lord, it is a brouhaha that we must make time for. She tapped the document with one forefinger. This is a summary of the... I'm pretty sure I'm saying this word wrong. It's like brouhaha. Braha? And question, my lord. Errol glanced up at her. She seemed to be quite fond of that word, he thought, or she was gently making fun of his choice of it in the first place. But Lady Pauline's face gave nothing away. She continued, if you care to look through it. He reached for it reluctantly. Pauline had known that he would try to avoid the subject. It was distasteful for all of them, but unfortunately it had to be resolved. At that moment there was a heavy-handed knock at the door to the Baron's office, and grateful for any interruption, he hastily called, "Come in." Pauline frowned at the distraction. It was Sir Rodney, head of the Redmond Battle School. He threw the door open and entered with a little more than his usual energy. He was talking before he had even crossed the threshold. "My lord, you're simply going to have to do something about Holt," he said. Then, noticing Lady Pauline, he made a small gesture of apology. "Oh, sorry, Pauline, didn't see you there." Lady Pauline inclined her head in acknowledgement of the apology. The classmaster at Redmond were all good friends. There was no petty jealousy between them, none of the manoeuvring for influence and favor that plagued some fiefs. The Baron sighed deeply. What has he done now? Do I sense another brouhaha in the making?" Lady Pauline said innocently, and he glanced suspiciously at her. She seemed not to notice. "Well, one of my fourth-year apprentices was stupid enough to make a remark about Will and Horace being sent off on a soft assignment. Said that's all they were good for." "Oh dear," said Lady Pauline. "I do hope he didn't make this remark in Holt's hearing." "Unfortunately, yes," said Rodney. "He's not a bad lad, all muscle and bone, mind you, and a good deal of that between his ears, but he was feeling his oats a little and told Holt to mind his own business." He paused, then added, by way of explanation, "Everyone's a little jumpy what with all the preparations for war." "So how is the lad?" Harold asked. Rodney shrugged. "The infirmary says there's no lasting damage. He'll be back on duty in a few days' time. But the point is, I can't have Holt going around damaging my apprentices. I'm going to need them soon." Harold toyed with one of the quill pens on his desk. "He's definitely been difficult these past few days," he said. "It's like having a bear with a sore head around the castle. In fact, I think I might prefer a bear with a sore head. It would be less disruptive." "We were about to discuss Holt's behavior as you arrived, Rodney," Lady Pauline said, taking the opportunity to return the conversation to the case in hand. "There's been a complaint about him from Sir Diggory of Bargo. What, Bargo? Barger. "Digby," Rodney said, a frown touching his face. Didn't he try to short change us on his draft on them. Exactly, said the Baron. We're having a lot of that going on at the moment, so I sent Holt to straighten matters out. Thought it might be a good idea to give him something to keep his mind busy. So what's Digby got to complain about? Rodney asked. It was obvious from his tone that he felt no sympathy for the recalcitrant commander of Baga. Hold, hold. The Baron gestured for Lady Pauline to explain. Apparently, she said, Holt threw him into the moat. Oh, that's kind of funny. Okay, well, thank you for listening to me read chapter 6. If you'd like to listen to me read chapter 7, then please stay tuned. Thank you. Bye-bye.